Joining me right now, Basil Smikle, professor at Columbia University and former executive director of the New York State Democratic Party, along with Brendan Buck, former press secretary to former VP candidate Paul Ryan. Both are MSNBC political analysts. Welcome to you both. Basil, I want to remind people how far removed Trump or Vance are from anyone who had firsthand knowledge of these rumors. The woman who initially made the Facebook post says she's now filled with regret. She heard it from a friend of a friend of a neighbor, and so on, right? I mean, are voters seeing now the utter disregard for fact in the Trump campaign?
Well, it's existed for quite some time. And, you know, what we talked about before is the nature of Trump's sort of call and response. He'll say something, it gets amplified. And therefore, the control over the narrative gets lost. And he will say, well, I didn't say it. I've heard it from somebody else. And
I heard it on TV.
But you are,
I mean, come on.
Right, but you are a national political leader. So you have a platform where what you say does matter. And he just does, he's never really embraced that. I remind everyone of Pizzagate back in 2016. A man drove from North Carolina to Washington because he felt, believing in these conspiracy theories, that young children were being trafficked at a pizzeria in Washington, D.C. So when you think about the magnitude of this, to me as a Jamaican American, I've heard stereotypes before, but never from the mouth of a presidential nominee. And so it's disgusting, it's shameful, and it also has real world consequences for people's actual lives. And that's what we're seeing play out right now.
So, Brendan, on the day that the City Hall was evacuated, Trump was posting memes like this. There you go. He was also asked yesterday if he would stop spreading misinformation because of the danger it had caused. He didn't answer the question. He instead said, hey, the real problem's at the border. Does Trump not understand his words have ripple effects? Does he not care? Or worse, does he intentionally do it?
Yeah, I'm glad you raised that. I mean, that was a remarkable moment. It was pointed out to him that school children are being evacuated from their classrooms because of the comments he's making, and he showed absolutely no remorse for it. And I think it's important. It's not just the online chatter that made its way to him. There is strategic importance to the Trump campaign for doing this. They want to dehumanize immigrant populations in this country, because you can't talk about rounding up millions of people and tearing them away from their country that they've lived in for, some of them, their entire lives, tear apart families, unless you dehumanize them. And I think that's ultimately what this is about and why they're leaning into the Haitian community. It's not lost on anybody that there's a racial component to this as well. And so there's no real, I think this is an important point. On the Republican right, there is no outer limit on how out there you could be on immigration. Remember Donald Trump talked about bombing Mexico to stop gangs from coming in here?
Yeah.
There's no backlash to any of this. So he pays no price for it. And his entire campaign is built around turning out people who support these kinds of things. So I don't think there's any, we should have no confidence that he's going to tap the brakes on this anytime soon.
Okay, then, Basil, let's move to far-right conspiracy theorist Laura Loomer, who's also spread these lies that we're talking about. And rather shockingly, she joined Trump this week to commemorate 9/11. Loomer claims 9/11, by the way, was an inside job. Trump associating with her panics even the most MAGA Republicans. You have Marjorie Taylor Greene, who shared and condemned a racist post that Loomer made about Harris this month. What does Trump hope to get out of listening to or being advised by a conspiracy theorist?
Yeah, for the longest time, we've been saying that Donald Trump politically, electorally, has a ceiling. He can't go above, 48%. So instead of trying to raise the ceiling, he's digging deeper into the floor, in my view. I mean, going into the darkest places of conspiracy theories and theorists to go and get support. So to Brendan's point earlier, which is a very important one, there is a political benefit that he sees doing this. And by expanding and amplifying these theories, these statements, and actually having somebody with him whispering in his ear, and consistently feeding this to him, it really does talk a lot about, how far, I don't want to even say how far right he's gone, just how far away from reality he really is. And I imagine that, for the voter, I don't care if you're a Democrat, Independent, or Republican, you have to find this not just strange, but alarming that someone who does not deal in anything close to reality has that much influence on a presidential candidate.
Untethered from reality, absolutely. So, Brendan, what does it say that even far-right members of the Republican Party, they're trying to stop Trump from associating with Loomer, and they're failing? Does this suggest to you that Trump is just not interested in expanding his voting pool, that he believes he can win with his current level of support?
Donald Trump's political strategy has always been creating his own reality. And I think he likes the reality that people like Laura Loomer, talk about for him. I don't want to give any credit to a Marjorie Taylor Greene or someone like that for being a voice of reason. I think Marjorie Taylor Greene just wishes she was on that plane because she herself is engaged in all kinds of crazy conspiracy theories. I think people should just save their breath. We've been doing this for 8 years, telling Donald Trump how he should act better and do different things. He's just not going to. This is not about his campaign. This is not about Laura Loomer. This is about this man who, as you said, doesn't have any real respect for truth, fact, reality. He just wants to live in the reality that works best for him, and he wants to hear people tell him how great he is. And if you find somebody, even if they're the wackiest person on the internet, he'll bring them in and listen to them, as we've seen him sit down with all kinds of people I would not ever want anyone associating with in any level of politics, let alone person who's the Republican nominee for president.